Welcome everybody to the Asia Farm Animal Day 2021. This event is hosted and organized by the Asia for Animal Coalition and supported by various members. We would like our member would like to make it like annual event. So this is the second conference. This is the second Farm Animal Day celebration by the coalition, and hopefully we're looking forward to organizing more events in the future, and looking forward to sharing experience with you and celebrating the day. With today we have gone through 5 sessions before for NGOs, and this one will be the last one in the session for NGO staff, with looking at sharing experience and introducing funding opportunity. Today we have Shweta Sood as our moderator. Shweta is currently head of programs at 50 by 40, and she also leads the vertical on climate change partnerships with and Global South. We also have our privileged speakers, Maho and Olga, but I will leave it with Shweta to introduce the speakers and the content of the presentation today. The ground is yours, Shweta.
Thank you so much. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's tuning in today, and welcome to day 2 of the Asia Farm Animal Day conference. As we just said, my name is Shweta, and I'm here to moderate our panel on the future of the farmed animal movement in Asia. This last session today will share the strategies and successes of the End the Cage Age campaign that has run successfully in the EU, as well as the success of cage-free commitments in Japan. Presenting on those 2 topics, we have 2 eminent experts with us. To begin with, we have Olga Kikou, who heads the EU Office of the Compassionate World Farming. Compassionate World Farming, as many of you may already know, is an international organization that is dedicated to improving farm animal welfare, ending industrial animal agriculture, and achieving sustainable food and farming for all. Holding a PhD from the University of Massachusetts and having worked in international organizations in the nonprofit sector, Olga became involved in raising awareness on the importance of citizen participation a while ago. She managed the volunteer program for the Athens 2004 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and then on she steered her efforts towards advocacy work. Olga has had a long time involvement in animal advocacy and is currently informing the EU institutions on key interests concerning the interlinked areas of farm animal welfare, food, and farming, thereby raising the profile of these issues on the policymaking agenda. Today, Olga is representing the Citizens Committee for the End the Age campaign, a European citizens initiative. We also have with us Maho from the Humane League Japan. Since joining the Humane League Japan's team in 2017, Maho has worked to engage with corporations and producers in Japan to implement cage-free policies. The concept of animal welfare and cage-free rearing are still not promulgated in Japan as much. So THL Japan has utilized any and all opportunities to educate and inform businesses, communities, as well as producers to raise awareness on this front. Maho studied animal advocacy and policies at Humane Society University graduate program and has worked as an animal protection advocate for 2 decades now. We welcome you to this session, Maho. Please note that this is an interactive session, so please do share any questions you have or any comments you have with us in the chat, and we'd be happy to kind of take those questions after the presentations. And on that note, let's get started. Back to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be invited to your event. I will present today the European Citizens Initiative to end the use of cages for farmed animals in the EU, and I hope that this will be the case for Asia too in the near future. We work in the EU office in Brussels, in Belgium, and we work there to enforce and strengthen animal welfare legislation, especially for farmed animals, as well as we also work on other issues related to farm animal welfare, such as sustainable food and farming. Through our work, we target the European Parliament, the European Commission, the Council of the European Union, that is the Council of the Member States, and many other players in Brussels. We work together with many stakeholders, including NGOs and many others. Our team in Asia, Tracy and Rubia, they work primarily on Japan and Thailand. They work with food businesses to help them progress their cage-free and broiler chicken work in Asia. And you can reach out to them for information, advice, or in case you have any questions or you would like clarification about their work. In the member states of the European Union, 27 member states, many of the policies in member states are actually shaped by EU legislation, by what the EU institutions in Brussels decide. So in many cases we see this happens. In other cases we see that legislation is actually voted and decided by the member states themselves in some areas, and the EU in a way can support and complement this national legislation. Since 2012, we have a tool in the European Union called the European Citizens Initiative, which allows citizens to participate in the decision-making process. So with this tool, we have at least 1 million citizens from from at least a quarter of the EU member states. They can ask, using this tool, they can ask the European Commission to propose legislation in areas where the Commission has competence. This happens to be farmed animal welfare. The organizers of a European Citizens Initiative are 7 people, 7 citizens from 7 different EU member states, and they have 1 year to collect the necessary support, which is at least 1 million validated signatures. And here's an overview of EU's legislation on animal welfare. We have 5 so-called directives. We have a general directive for animals kept for farming purposes, which is called the 98/58 directive. We have 4 other directives on a species-specific legislation, and these are one for laying hens, one for chickens for meat production, another one for calves, and another one on pigs. And we also have 2 regulations, a regulation on the killing of animals and a regulation on animal transport. And here's our journey of the European Citizens Initiative and the KJH. It's always a pleasure to go through this journey again, and I will do this with you. And here is what the European Citizens Initiative and the KJH asks. The European Citizens Initiative calls for an end to the use of cages for the hundreds of millions of farmed animals who are caged in the EU every year. These animals are the rabbits, pullets, broiler breeders, layer breeders, quail, ducks and geese, laying hens, sows, and calves. The legislative ask is basically to revise the farming directive that I mentioned before and to phase out the use of cages by the year 2027. Cages are a cruel tool that perpetuates factory farming of animals. They severely restrict natural behavior. They lead to many welfare and health problems. As we know, enriched cages for hens actually prevent them from dust bathing or flapping their wings. Hens have about the space of a A4 sheet of paper. Rabbits also live in tiny spaces. They cannot even stand up with their ears up or lie stretched out. Sows spend many months inside these crates where they cannot even turn around. For these and many other reasons, the use of cages should be abandoned in the EU, and this is why we proceeded with this European Citizens Initiative. I will now show some of the current systems of cages as well as alternatives that exist in each case. Here in the case of laying hens, the enriched cages actually prevent animals from expressing their natural behaviors, while at the same time we have alternatives which are in existence in many farms in Europe, and they are viable and they are sustainable in the long run. For example, barn and free-range and organic systems provide better welfare for the birds. In the case of rabbits, most rabbits, the overwhelming majority of rabbits in Europe, live in tiny spaces inside barren cages, and they are actually unable to stretch out there. They are unable to express their natural behaviors. We have alternative systems. In this case, park systems offer rabbits the ability to stretch out, to hop, to jump, and they also provide them with spaces to hide, which is very important for rabbit behavior. Sows spend half of every year inside farrowing crates or sow stalls, which are very problematic for animal welfare. The animals cannot even turn around in this small space. This causes, of course, immense stress to them and leads to behaviors such as bar biting. We offer alternatives. These alternatives are in existence in many farms in Europe. The animals are healthier. They are either indoor cage systems or free-range systems, and animals have opportunities to express natural behavior. Aggression is minimized, and of course, the sows and the piglets have better lives. Calves spend up to 8 weeks after they're born in individual pens. This, of course, restricts their natural behavior and causes a lot of stress for the young animals. They do not have the opportunity to play and exercise. In the alternative that exists, calves can be kept in groups, whether this is on pasture or it can be indoors in straw. And this allows them to be in close contact with other animals of their age. They actually quite often form relationships that can last for years and have the opportunity to play and exercise. Up to 40 million of ducks and geese spend the last 2 weeks of their lives in cages. This happens for the production of foie gras. There are humane systems in order to produce fatty liver, which avoid all use of cages and avoid force feeding. Animals are kept in rich environments, and they have opportunities for foraging and bathing, which is necessary for their species. Quail also are in cages, are kept in cages, and these are tiny cages. They are unable to fly, they're unable to seek cover, they're unable to dust bathe and lay their eggs in a nest. These are necessary natural behaviors. They have the cages actually cause them significant injuries in case the animals want to fly up, want to fly vertically because this is a natural behavior of theirs. We propose non-cage systems which can allow for foraging and dust bathing and hiding, and they don't cause them any harm. The End the Cage Age European Citizens Initiative collected almost 1.4 million verified signatures. These signatures were verified by the member states. These signatures were collected in 28 member states. During the time of the collection period, the UK was also a member state, and that's why we have 28 countries there, as you can see in the slide. It is the sixth successful initiative since the launch of this initiative tool about 10 years ago. And it was actually first, an equal first in the number of signatures that were collected, and also it is the first successful initiative for farmed animals. You can see here in this slide the various partners of the network that belong to a network that was established, a network of over 170 non-governmental non-profit organizations. These were organizations as well as federations, and they included not only animal welfare groups, but they included farm groups and they included environmental groups too. We coordinated this network of 170 organizations using many different tools, and we produced newsletters. We had regular calls with the members of the network. We provided materials for the members of the network in order for them to use with their supporters and to spread the word in the member states. And of course, there was a very active social media presence, very evident, as you may have seen, which contributed to the success of the ECI. We created digital content for the organizations who were partners in the ECI. We created special websites for them in their own language with the information about the End the Cage Age ECI. Also help them with social media materials because social media is very important in Europe, and citizens learn a lot about what is happening in the world around them through social media. We also produced printed materials useful to hand out to interested citizens who wanted to read more about the ECI. These materials were quite helpful, especially for those citizens who did not have the capacity to look for information about the ECI in the internet. Early on in the planning phase of the campaign, before we actually launched the ECI, We set targets per country in order to have a good idea about how many citizens we needed to sign the ECI in each of the countries of the European Union. So we, of course, given the fact that there is a validation process taking place, that all the member states, the competent authorities in the member states validate these signatures that are submitted to them, and they check them to see whether there are any discrepancies. We had to have more than the 1 million signatures, and we needed to have a safe number so we could be certain that the ECI would be a valid ECI and would have a valid number, a good valid number of signatures that would surpass the 1 million. And you can see here how many numbers, what the targets were for each country. We set milestones. On September 2018, the ECI was approved by the European Commission. Following this, we had a big launch event at the European Parliament in Brussels on September 25th. This was followed by a number of launch events in other European countries. We also had many events taking place throughout Europe during the year when the signature collection was taking place. And at the end of this year, we also had a high-profile event in Brussels that marked the end of the signature collection phase. And here are some photos from launch events we had in Italy. You see here a minister who is actually signing the ECI. In Belgium, on the bottom part of the slide, with people holding up cages and damaging and destroying cages. In Poland, with the movie theater there, with a big meeting with many supporters, and in the Netherlands. More events here, more launch events in France, in Greece, and in Brussels at the European Parliament, where we had the big launch event together with many MEPs. More events here, more launch events in France, in Greece, and in Brussels at the European Parliament, where we had the big launch event together with many MEPs. You can see here pictures from some of our events that actually took place in Austria, Germany, and Denmark. Quite a big number of supporters were organizing these events, and of course, in coordination with the partner organizations that supported the ECI. Many partner NGOs participated in the ECI by being quite active with social media posts. As you can see here, we had many occasions where all these partners were posting information about the ECI, calling on citizens in the member states to support the ECI. We also worked with celebrities who were helping to gather signatures, were presenting their support for the ECI, and calling on others to do the same. addition, quite regularly there were emails to supporters with information about the ECI, asking them to support it, asking them to to spread the word and find others to support it, and of course keeping everyone quite involved and informed regarding the progress of the campaign. In the network would also present information about the ECI via web news, their websites. They would use many opportunities to inform their supporters. And this is how we all managed all the 170 plus organizations. That's how we managed to raise the number of signatures and surpass the 1 million. We see here advertisements, partners in the network actually even had advertisements in newspapers regarding the ECI, trying to find supporters this way. For the End the Cage Age ECI, we had the support from a group of, in the European Parliament, a group of MEPs, of members of the European Parliament, called the Cage-Free Farming Working Group. And you can see here some of the people who are members of this group, and some of their actions to support the ECI. They support this by, of course, being active in social media, participating in events, and writing to the European Commission, and many other activities that they were engaged in. We also had support from many companies, major companies, international ones, also operating in the EU, which called on the European Commission to end the use of cages, starting with caged hens. Very important support there. We also had support from many scientists who wrote to the European Commission asking for an end to the use of cages in farming. And you can see here Dr. Jane Goodall, who was among those scientists. Also support from the International Association of Veterinary Students, who represent many students around the world, and they actively supported the ECI. And in the end, on June 30th this year, we had a communication was issued from the European Commission. We had this communication, which actually presented the outcome from this effort, and the outcome was a big win for animals. It was, as the European Commissioner said, a historic day for animal welfare. The Commission committed to phase out the use of cages in the EU, and to refer specifically to the date of 2027. And they committed to propose legislation by the end of the year 2023. So in the meantime, of course, we will keep our work going to make sure that this becomes a reality for animals. In regards to the trade with third countries, which is a very important issue, not just for the animal advocacy movement, but also for farmers, and they have repeatedly raised this. The Commission's communication, which was issued on June 30th of this year, does raise this issue and does talk about the introduction of rules or standards for products imported into the EU, and the need to be equivalent to the EU standards. Another important issue is the financial support for farmers, for those people who raise animals, it is important that support is given to them to be able to transition to alternative systems and get rid of cages. So we call to provide for the EU to provide a secure financial basis for farmers to embark on this transition. And this can be done through suitable funding schemes at EU level, for example, the Common Agricultural Policy, as well as other policies, but also at national level. We are also happy to see many EU countries making progress. We see countries proposing and enacting bans on the use of cages for laying hens. We also see progress for sows and rabbits. These are very positive developments in the EU, and we hope this trend continues. And as you can see here, we see positive development in countries outside the EU. These are small but important steps, including what is happening in the US, where a good number of states have actually adopted bans on cages for hens. You can see here the European Commission's timeline. This past summer, we already had the inception impact assessment. We have these months, we have public consultations, a big conference in December where the European Commission will present the steps forward and will also talk about what has happened already. Then in 22, we have more impact assessments, and in 22 and 23, we have opinions. These are scientific opinions from the European Food Safety Authority. And sometime towards the last quarter of 2023, the Commission is expected to present its legislative proposal, which will revise animal welfare legislation and also propose the wording for making the end the cage age a reality. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present our work here, but also thank you for all the work you're doing in Asia, and good luck with all your projects in the future.
Thank you so much, Olga, for that wonderful presentation. I think it's great to see that there has been so much work that has worked so well in the European Union. Especially, I thought the involvement of the EU parliamentarians in this campaign, I thought was something that's really new and exciting and can really push our advocacy efforts towards success. I think it was also a really holistic campaign on policy change. And I think moving on from this campaign on policy change, we have a presentation on how we can work with corporates to catalyze cage-free commitments now. And this is a case from Asia, from Japan. So we will have more lessons that we can learn that can be implemented across Asia, hopefully. And once again, I'd like to remind everyone to please share any questions that they might have in the chat below. We'd be happy to take them after this presentation. So over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to the AFF Conference 2021. And thank you for giving me the opportunity at the Future of Our Movement session to share our work for layer hens in Japan. My name is Maho. I work for the Humane League Japan. The Humane League, known as THL, started as a small grassroots group in the US, and we now have expanded in the world. We have a team in Mexico to cover Latin America. Another team is in the UK to cover Europe. The team in Japan, THL Japan, was launched in 2017 as the hub of Asia. In Japan, on average, over 140 million hens are raised for egg production. About 95% of the layer hens are kept in small cages. What we're trying to work on is to end the egg production using battery and enriched cages and replace them with non-cage systems such as barn, aviary, free range, or better organic. So, how the world around hens are changing, how the global trend is changing. Across Europe, home to some of the largest egg producers in the world, animal protection groups have secured over 1,000 cage-free policies. And of course, this number is ever increasing, with the European Commission reporting in 2017 that nearly 50% of hens across Europe now reside in cage-free systems. In France, EU's largest egg producing country, the entire food industry and even egg producers themselves are completely moving away from cages. All evidence of a rapid sea of change, which has taken place all in the last 5 to 6 years. And there are over 90 global corporations that have policies that cover their global locations. Such companies are including Nestle, Unilever, Hilton, PepsiCo, Best Western Hotels, Kellogg, Mondelez, and so on. How about companies in Japan? Are they making any differences for layer hens, or what are they doing? There are challenges in Japan in terms of cage-free work. There are common challenges that are the cage-free activists face in Asia, such as insufficient cage-free egg supply, low awareness, unwillingness to pay more for eggs, and so on. In addition, there are unique challenges in Japan due to the social culture and a business culture. There are no standards for cage-free eggs or overarching egg production standard. There is a strong reluctancy to be the first one to make a change. No success models of cage-free businesses in Japan. So it's hard to picture for corporations or for producers a roadmap to the success. And there is no standards that spell out what cage-free eggs really means. International models and knowledge are helpful, but is usually used just for reference. But those knowledge has to be produced and generated in Japan in order to be really useful or taken seriously. Businesses are highly risk avoidant, so all the steps they make have no mistakes, no risks, no errors. Even if producers want to make a change to humane production systems, it's very hard for them to do so, as there is virtually no financial incentives or support from the government. Having said this, there are companies that have made changes. So together with our colleague in Japan, Animal Rights Center Japan, we have secured over 100 policies in Japan. Majority of them has set their target year as 2025. For example, Hilton Hotel, Unilever, Four Seasons, Intercontinental Hotel, Marriott, Subway, and so on. These are the companies that have changed to cage-free, and these companies are global corporations, so their headquarters in different countries. And just recently, Open Wing Alliance, OWA, their tireless effort, another big company joined in the global cage-free movement, that is Yam Brands. Yam has KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. They have decided to go cage-free by 2030 globally. So 2030 is for their global locations and European, North American locations by 2026. Despite many challenges, there are companies that are changing in Japan. For example, Kewpie. Kewpie is globally known mayonnaise manufacturer, and they claim that they use 10% of eggs produced in Japan. This year, Kewpie added a sentence about cage-free eggs to their procurement policy. Their sentences go, shell eggs we produce and use in our group in Japan shall be complied with the animal welfare guidelines for layer hens in Japan. And they continue, we think of development of products which are made from cage-free eggs. So Kewpie, to address this, is a huge step in Japan. Along with Kewpie, another huge food manufacturers in Japan gradually are adding animal welfare policies in their procurement policies. For example, Ajinomoto formed a working group within the company in 2019 and have engaged with local experts and NGOs. Meiji is one of the companies that are listed in BB5, and they are the only Japanese companies that rose up from the bottom tier 6 to tier 5. And these companies, Ajinomoto, Nippon Ham, Nissin, and also Kewpie, have added animal welfare in their policies, which is a huge step for us in Japan. The biggest news for us in this year is that the cafeteria at the Cabinet Office of Japan has gone cage-free. This is because of a food contract company, Nikok Trust, that has decided to change their egg supplies to cage-free at the Cabinet Office's cafeteria. I feel that this greatly impacts the cage-free movement in Japan. As you can see, there have been impressive progresses in Japan, but what about the future? First of all, congratulations on the victory of End the Cage Age. So how this will influence the future for our work in Japan? This is what I think. End the Cage Age calls for strict and efficient measures to avoid the imports of cheaper products with lower animal welfare standards from non-EU countries. So it will greatly influence the Japan's animal product industry. Japan is aiming to increase the livestock product exports. Japan is already exporting beef, broiler, egg products to EU countries, and they are required to follow the EU import guidelines for now. And Japan has to use the designated slaughter methods to comply with the EU standards. They're mostly about hygiene-related measures, such as HACCP, but with the end the cage age, they have to comply with cage-free production. Until recently, Japan's livestock products, including eggs, were produced in a black box. Now with the global businesses and livestock product exports, the contents of the black box have to be revealed. Japan has to comply with the demands of the world, not just of the local business and consumers. And the global interest is to reduce the suffering and inhumane treatment of animals.
Thank you so much, Maho, for that lovely presentation. I think there's a lot to learn in that, and like Japan seems like a big success story in terms of corporate change. So I think my first question would really just be that could you share a little more about your work in Japan, and in particular, how do you think Japan's case can be a role model for other developing nations in Asia?
Yeah, Shweta, thank you so much for the question, and everyone, thank you for having me. Well, I'm not actually, I feel that other Asian countries are progressing faster. Let's say Southeast Asia, Thailand, Singapore, and for example, Korea, they have some openings to the opportunities for K3. So I personally feel that Japan's progress is slower, but some uniqueness, like I mentioned about Japanese business culture, being very careful and takes time building process. Eventually, I'm sure eventually they will produce K3 policies, but they're making sure each step is addressed, risk avoidance. So this kind of cautious progress will create very good, I hope, high level of K3 policies. So in that sense, yeah, if this becomes a model case, I think we can expect good, high quality K3 policies. It's my wishful thinking, but.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I think like one thing that is unique about Asia, and I think when we talk about the European Union, you know, we use the language of member states because we kind of think of course they have their own culture and like diversity, but they're also kind of, you know, we say member states, they're like, it's a union, they're interchangeable. Whereas I think when you look at Asia, between China, Indonesia, India, Japan, South Korea, there's just so much diversity that I think policies will really have to cater to, and like, I mean, people will have to work with the knowledge of what works in a particular demography and what doesn't. Like that is just so unique, and rightly, like you said, like the case in Japan of people being so careful and you know, there being like a culture of respect and knowledge, and like I think it shifts things in a big way, which I think is also true to some degree in India. Like I think it's a lot about how people perceive you, and I think if policy shifts happen for that, that's also great. I think my second question was because I think the first thing that we spoke about, of course, with EU was a big policy change, and you know, we're really saying the government or like legislations are shifting policies. Whereas I think with the case in Japan, like you just shared, it is more about how we can get corporates to kind of make this change. And I think the same theme I think comes up in different ways. Does it make sense to work at the national level, or do you think it's smarter to work with cities because it's so much faster change? So do you feel like corporates are the game-changing model for change? Yeah.
That's an important question. I think legislative, for example, or government are definitely necessary. Usually the process is slow because it has to cover. So in the case of Japan, 95% of layer hens are in cages. So you have to be mindful about the reality. You can't change to cage quickly. And especially in terms of lawmaking, it takes, you know, long time, as you know. So yes, it's important. I see the corporations are changing, even though they may be slow. So I think it's both ways. Corporations may push and kind of policies aiming at 2025 or maybe 2027. They're pushing the governments to think of other way and necessity to go cage free, because well, it used to be livestock products are really, especially eggs, are completed in Japan. It didn't go out, but now Japan is pushing for exports of cage free shell eggs. So definitely it's more visible to outside, and corporations are changing. This topic of I hope some from the government side.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like because in India, a lot of our production is also exported. At least so far, a lot of the places that we're exporting to are actually like Southeast Asia. And therefore, actually, the level of kind of, you know, how you're saying, because like it's going to the EU, there's a certain degree of legislation and there's a certain degree of welfare that just comes in. And I think because we're not importing to places, that we're not exporting to places like the EU, I think that is right now in India kind of like a way for us to scapegoat out welfare and still be able to kind of keep exporting. So I think again, like it certainly is an interesting case even in India, because if we want to export to other areas outside of Southeast Asia, then we will have to up our game as far as welfare is concerned. And I think that, to me, I think also brings me to another interesting question, because I am, and I think even the Humane League and like even Compassionate World Farming believe that, like, you know, there's some degree of farming, some degree of animal farming that will always kind of happen, and there's like a way in which animal farming can kind of go on. And factory farming, of course, is not that way. Factory farming is not how we want to kind of see farming happening. We also know that the numbers at which factory farming is happening right now, it is nearly impossible to reach those same numbers with high welfare. So do you think like a message of reduction is just inherent in a high welfare message? And do you think that's the right way to kind of phrase that message? Do you think that does our movement justice, or like just generally, what are your views on that?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Yes, yeah, the Humane League, our mission currently is animal welfare, as you all know. But you also know, and the Humane League is also addressing plant-based veganism. So that's our end goal. I don't know how many years and how much time we need, but I think it's inherent, I hope. The reason is for example, cage-free movement. Right now, eggs are expensive. If you want to buy cage-free eggs, you have to reduce the amount of eggs consumption, maybe, right? Maybe in the future, the prices will go down. But I believe this theory will change. So we're at the very, very first step of the big change that might be based in veganism. And I think in that sense, yes, it's part of it. And I actually myself is vegan for a long time. And when I started working for farm animal welfare, I had definitely conflict and had battle in my side, like, oh, what am I doing? I just want to, you know, cut all the you know, meat products, animal products. But in the end, it makes sense to me. I think veganism, that movement is definitely important. It pushes from the other side. But we cannot just skip the whole current, you know, situation. There are animals used for food production. We cannot skip it. We cannot ignore it. We have to take the first step, which is to address the reduction. So, and I know the concern is that, well, maybe the movement will stop right there, cage-free, and there are lots of victories. That's the end of the game. I doubt it, because there are more work to do for broiler fish and, you know, dairy cows and cattle. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. I think that is so true. And I feel like sometimes when the business side speaks up, you know, when you have like beef associations or like dairy associations speak up, it's often like in this very broad stroke, one color of, you know, we hate all farming, you know, all farming must stop. And I think that becomes an argument against the work that we're doing. And I think this path of welfare and actually saying that, no, the smallholder farmers are, you know, like they do need to exist. It's about livelihoods as well. And maybe like that is the model that we want to espouse. I think that is certainly a good path for us. And I think there's just 1 minute left. So I'm just going to kind of quickly phrase my last thought that I had, which you also touched on, which is that especially like I think with India, Indonesia, we have like so much of like we're talking about like cage-free eggs, etc., but like shrimp welfare or like fish welfare, or even like I'm forgetting, I don't know if it's Singapore, I'm getting there, but shark fin soup, things like that, which are delicacies, etc. What do you see? Where do you see us going with that? And any closing thoughts that you have after that? So yeah.
You mean the particular like fish welfare or marine?
Just generally all marine. Like, so I think our focus has really been on cage free, which is really, really good. And I think it's shown progress. So do you think the next step is fish welfare then? Yeah.
Yeah, Japan is really the center of fish, consumption nation in the world. So I think it's important to cover that. Actually, now my head is really buried with the cage-free movement. So I can't really see the future really, just thinking of cage-free. But our focus is next will be broiler. And then next will be, UK team has already moved on to the fish welfare.
Right.
So I think that's the organization's direction. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And but I feel that the cage-free movement in Japan has just started, making sure the first step is secure, we build the foundation, credibility, and the cage-free movement becomes a civil movement rather than just animal rights movement or welfare movement. If you can bring the movement to the level, I think you can move to the next level. Can start maybe broiler.
Yes. Yeah, I completely makes sense. Especially, I mean, I work in collective impact and want to bring about like all different players to the table. So I completely agree with you. Thank you so much, Maho, for all your wonderful inputs and for your lovely presentation. And thank you everyone else for attending this session. It has been lovely to speak with you all, and I hope it was informative and helpful to you in the work that we continue to do in Asia. Thank you so much. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shweta and Maho. I think the session could end here. And thanks everybody for participating in this session. I hope you enjoy the day and the weekend ahead. And talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shweta.